All right, so what's TPN?
Nutrition.
Nutrition that goes through your vein. Good. So it's a solution with concentrated nutrition to provide nutritional support to somebody who can't maintain the correct amount of support that they need through intake or feeding tube. So does that mean that any patient that is getting TPN or PPN that we're not going to give them food? No, sometimes we use it just to give them the extra that they need, right? So here are your components of your TPN. I did take them off of here, but this is what I want you guys to remember when you're going to take your test. Just remember MADE TV. That's the acronym I need you to remember. So what does the M stand for?
Minerals.
Minerals. A.
Amino acids.
Amino acids. D.
No.
Dextrose. E. Electrolytes. T. Trace elements. V. Vitamins. So you will remember just MADE TV and be able to remember what those are, and you will get that at least 1 point on the test, right? I don't know if that question's on there, but if it is, you guys will totally be like MADE TV. So those are your components of TPN. So who do we give TPN to? Patients that can't feed themselves. We just determined that, right? That they can't get enough nutrition. So sometimes, what's that first one mean? That big whole like hyperemesis gravidarum? Excessive vomiting. So a lot of times the pregnant women, they won't just get morning sickness. They'll be like in the hospital with morning sickness because they just can't stop. So those are the patients that we'll have to do TPN with. If your patient has an intestinal obstruction and we're trying to rest that gut, so we don't want to give them even anything through an NG tube, we'll give them TPN because it's not going through the gut and we can rest the gut. Sometimes they'll use it with anorexia patients. So cancer patients, you'll see a lot getting the TPN. Sometimes the radiation will cause obstructions. It can cause adhesions. Radiation just has all sorts of really nasty effects. And if they're getting radiation anywhere in this area, it's going to affect their gut. I was just talking to one of the other BSN instructors. Her sister has breast cancer, but it was on the wall of her peritoneum also, so they were doing lots of like palliative radiation, and they had to stop because the gut stuff that was going on was just so horrible. They were afraid she was going to perforate. So those patients that we just can't use the gut itself, we're going to use vascular instead. So sometimes, like I said, those patients that are so ill, so think about the last time you were really sick, laying on your couch or in your bed and you have your blankets up. You don't even want to take a sip of water, let alone sit up and eat your lunch, right? It doesn't sound good. You don't have any energy. So sometimes these patients in the hospital, if these patients are in there and they're really sick, do you think that their caloric intake needs go up or down? They go up. Your body's trying really hard to fix itself. So sometimes they need almost double the calories that they would normally need. So if you're sick and you don't want to eat what you would normally eat even, I can't ask you to eat double what you would normally eat, right? So these are those patients sometimes that we need to do TPN with also. The other name for TPN in your book, they call it CPN, Central Parenteral Nutrition. Yeah, so back in my day, it was just TPN and PPN, but now they call it CPN and PPN, so central and peripheral. I guess it makes sense. So TPN or CPN is going to go through some sort of central line or PIC line. If we're only putting that line in to feed them and we haven't had anything else going through it and we're just hooking them up to their first TPN, what do we want to make sure of?
Make sure it's patent.
Make sure that it's patent, but we also want to make sure that it's where it's supposed to be, right? So where does I know we haven't done CVEDs, we're doing it next, but where do they go to?
Superior vena cava.
Superior vena cava. So, but the doctor's in there and they're putting it in with a needle, and if they're not doing it under fluoroscopy or something, can they see through your skin to make sure it's going in the right place? It can go up into the neck. It can go all sorts of places. So we have to make sure that we get an X-ray to make sure it's where it needs to be. So after that X-ray, then we can start using it for TPN and our fluids and everything else. We always have to have it on a pump. We don't run it not on a pump. Has everybody seen PPN or TPN running?
No.
So what's at the end of that tubing before it goes into the patient?
Filter.
There's a filter. It's just a little flat rectangle at the end. Have you guys all seen it? Sometimes they'll send it, when they send the new bag up, they send just the filter and you can connect it to regular tubing. Nobody? You guys have seen it? Okay, I was going to say, because I'll grab one during the break. I'm pretty sure they have them over in the lab, and that way you can see what it looks like. So we always have to have the filter, and we always have to have a pump. I'm sorry, I talk really fast, I know. That's why I record, though. You can go back and listen to it. I'm sorry. Tell me to slow down. It's the New Englander in me. All right, so side effects and complications of TPN. What is one of the major things in there? Dextrose, sugar. Who loves sugar? Bacteria. So infection is our number one concern usually, localized and systemic. Metabolic problems that can occur. Again, we have a lot of sugar. So when we start somebody on TPN and we determine, oh, they're better, I don't think they need this anymore, do we just stop the TPN? Yeah, it's going to cause some hypoglycemia. And at first, your patient might have some hyperglycemia, right? It can cause altered renal function. It can cause metabolic issues as far as like vitamins and element deficiencies, fluid volume, and electrolyte imbalances. So what do you think we do on these guys every day? We do labs. We check their electrolytes and everything. So every day, because we don't leave these bags up for more than 24 hours max, we're going to have, I'm going to switch over to the document camera real quick. That's horrible. Can you guys actually see that? No. Me neither. All right, so I'll pass it around or you guys can come up and look. But it's orders, and it has the patient's name, and it has a standard formula, and I'm guessing that you would start that on someone that maybe wasn't going to be on it for very long. I've never seen them use a standard formula. But you have your formula over here where it's going to be in, depending on that patient's labs that morning, is what's going to be in that bag that day. So when you get TPN, it's kind of like blood. You have to grab it. Some places require an extra nurse. And you have to go down and make sure in the bag, on the front of the bag, the sticker, you have to compare that to your order and make sure that it matches. Okay? I haven't been a nurse that long, honest to goodness. But I remember when I first started doing this, the pharmacy would send us a bag, and then they would send us all these little vials and needles, and we sat there and we put all of our own stuff into that bag. Now, please don't ever stick a needle or anything in the bag, because now we know, like, that's introducing bacteria every time we stick a needle into that bag, right? So we don't want to introduce stuff into this. It's hard enough to keep the bacteria up because there's so much stuff gross in it. So we're never adding anything to our bags. Some of the other things that can happen, and I'm going to say that the rest of these are all secondary more to putting that CVAD in than it is to the actual TPN, but it's the air embolus, hemo, pneumo. Those are all secondary to when the doctor is actually putting that subclavian in. And we're going to talk about those in the next lecture, so I'm not going to go far into those now. So we already said how we're going to prevent our metabolic complications, right? We're going to start slow, and we're going to taper off. So we're never going to just start a patient all of a sudden. We're going to pump them up to 60 mLs an hour and just get them going because their blood sugar is going to go through the roof. Again, we're always going to use a pump. Now, TPN is a little bit different than PPN, and we're going to talk about PPN in a minute. So PPN can go into a peripheral. TPN is only for a central line. If you, for some reason, run out and your next bag is not there, are we just going to wait for the next bag to come up? No, why? Hypoglycemia, right? So if we're thinking we're trying to prevent hypoglycemia, what are we going to hang if we run out of TPN? Dextrose what? 10. Okay? And when we get to PPN, we're only hanging 5. But with the TPN, our emergency stop is always 10. When you get your bag, it's going to be refrigerated. Usually you want to take it out about half an hour before you're going to hang it, just to let it get a little bit warmer, because again, that's cold stuff going into your veins. Usually, even if you had to hang it, it probably wouldn't cause too much if it wasn't running too fast, but you always want to make sure when you know you have to hang it, grab it out. Again, never add anything to the bag or the tubing because you don't want to open up for bacteria. Before you even hang it, though, you want to look at that bag. It's going to be a color. It could have some yellow to it. It's going to depend on what's in it. But you want to make sure there's no crystals in it. There's nothing floating in it. It just doesn't look kind of iffy, right? Because sometimes things happen. The wrong thing might have gotten put in and they're causing some sort of reaction in there. So just like before you hang normal saline, you want to look at your PPN. You want to look at your saline, you know. Obviously, we're not drawing any blood from that line either. And again, I just talked about how we want to verify our content against the order, against the bag, just to make sure that we have the right stuff from the right day. So that was your TPN through a central line. So now we're going to switch it. We're going to PPN, so peripheral parenteral nutrition. So these can go through a peripheral line. So remember, I said that this has a lot less dextrose. Usually it's short term. So your patient just had like a small bowel obstruction and they did surgery and they want to rest the gut for 3 days. Does that mean we're just not going to feed them for 3 days? No, we're going to put them on PPN. So that way they're still getting their nutrients, but we're resting the gut. You're not going to get as many proteins and calories. So again, if your patient really is requiring the high calories and protein, we're going to go back to that TPN. This is the stuff if you have a patient, maybe an elderly patient, and they're sick and they're not really eating too much, but they're eating, we would supplement with PPN if they're not getting the nutrients that they need. And remember on this one, your emergency stop, 5. Blank slide, blank slide. I am missing 2 slides on there, so I'm going to go ahead and talk, and you guys can either take notes or you'll be able to hear it. You'll have the actual slides that have them too. So dressing change on your TPN, PPN, CVAD that you're using is going to be per policy. I know most places used to be 3 days. Now they're 7 days or PRN. So if it's soiled, falling off, just a little raunchy looking, we're going to change it. For the central lines, it used to be 3 days. I think now almost every place has gone to 7 days for the dressing change or PRN. But it's going to be whatever your facility policy is. Every 24 hours, it doesn't matter if you still have half a bag hanging up there, it has to come down. It cannot hang for longer than 24 hours. Once it comes out and it's hung, 24 hours. So it's probably going to be on your MAR for like every night at 6 o'clock or every night at 11 o'clock. And again, if you don't have what you need, you're going to hang your dextrose up until you get it, but it has to come down. I know some places have also stopped doing 24-hour changes, I think, on the tubing, but for testing purposes, the bag and the tubing has to be changed every 24 hours. For NCLEX as well. Every 24 hours. The filter, the tubing, and the bag cannot hang for longer than 24 hours. Right. How are we keeping track of their blood sugars? Finger stick. We never dose their insulin because all these patients are going to have insulin ordered, sliding scale insulin. We never dose it on like the 6 a.m. labs. It's always going to be your finger stick, and it's always going to be every 4 to 6 hours. Usually it's every 6 hours, 12-6, 12-6. And so that patient's sliding scale coverage is dosed by the finger stick, not the morning labs or anything. What else do you think we want to do on somebody that we're giving a huge bag of fluids to every day? Yeah, we definitely want to check their lung sounds, make sure that we're not fluid overloading them. We want to do daily weights, I heard over here. Definitely. Measure the I's and O's. Good. All right, so that's it for PPN. Are there any questions on TPN and PPN?